live. So excited to be here with you. Thank you, Krista, for joining us today. My name is Beth. I'm with the Queen Within Consulting, and we have Krista Reza with us today. She is an incredible woman that has so much to offer. Not only is she a remarkable guest speaker, she's a certified coach. Obviously, very motivational speaker. When you get to hear Krista, you're going to be a whole new person. She's a creator. She really does add so much. She has this amazing book called Why Am I Yelling? It's the brand that she's actually created, hashtag Why Am I Yelling? After experiencing her own transformation through coaching in 2015, she decided she needed to help others create their own transformation. So if you are struggling with personal blocks, professional blocks, you're feeling unappreciated, invisible, unworthy, and you're ready to start feeling more excited and happy and fulfilled, this is the right place for you. We're going to be talking about overcoming our fear of change, positive self-acceptance, relationship appreciation, and we're going to even include some morsels about faith. This particular live is going to focus on the 5 main essentials for relationships, which I think all of us are looking for more reminders about, insights about, ways to really step it up, because really what we know is that sustainable relationships are hard to come by. So super happy to hear about how, coming from 2 decades of corporate experience in relationship management, she's bringing knowledge and skills to us today, lucky us. She does group workshops, inspirational keynotes, and she's really focused on what her clients are needing. And of course, this incredible book she has, we're going to be making sure that you have access to that in the the notes, the show notes. This particular cast will be transformed into a podcast in the future. And for those of you that are with us, we are so happy you're able to be part of this amazing experience. We are going to be sharing this with our group here quickly here. We have a Happy Homes and Hearts group here on Facebook. That is the usual place for this to land, but we're going to put it in both places for now. And of course, Krista will be happy to share it on her channels here shortly. So thank you, Krista, for being with us today. I am so excited about what it takes to create sustainable relationships, what it is that we can bring forward to bring out what is, going to bring more romance into our relationships, what's going to bring the best morsels from research. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to share your knowledge and wisdom with us today. So apparently you had a journey that brought you to where you are today, and we want to talk about what it was before. But I imagine that really inspired, why am I yelling? I would love to hear what was it that just really brought that to the surface for you.
Sure. First, thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I love doing this stuff. So Why Am I Yelling started as a blog a little bit longer than 10 years ago. And it was in a response to a talk show host contest that I answered. I clearly did not win the contest, but I kept the blog going as a form of a hobby. I like to write. At the time I was working in corporate America, I have a very long, boring corporate background in sales and management and relationship building, business operations, that kind of stuff. And 5 years ago, I decided it was time to make a change. And I was at a space in my life where I was feeling unfulfilled and overwhelmed with stuff that was going on at work. And it was unsettling and unsavory. And it was a very toxic environment. And I had not experienced that to that level ever in my life. And so it really did a number on my, just on my overall health, my mental health, my personal health, my physical health. It really it dragged me down. And so I found a way to get out of that, and took some time for myself and really sat down, and I actually worked with a career coach who pushed me toward, doing something that I really wanted to do. Instead of just going back and getting another job, it was, let's do something you really want to do. So that's how I came into coaching. I wanted to use the experience that I had in my life and pass it on, because I had been successful with it, and pass it on to show other women, other parents, other couples, other people who are struggling at some point in their life with whatever it is they're struggling with their career, with their lives, with their relationships. and put forth that effort into coaching myself. So that's how Why Am I Yelling started, and that's how it became my brand and all of that stuff. I am currently, I just released my, well, not just released, I released my first book at the end of last year. So we've been really pushing, getting that out there and getting that visible and really making that the number one priority for the brand currently. And it really is a foundational relationship book. And it talks about the 5 essentials that you need in all of your relationships with that, which I think is the right place to start, because I'm going to write a book series when I continue the series. So the next book will be about marriage and then babies and I don't like my job. How do I get a new one? And like, all the Why Am I Yelling guides to having a successful life and a happy life and all that stuff. So that's what it's about.
So for me, when I hear the, why am I yelling? It reminds me of the days when I was like, oh, I'm just at my wit's end with this situation. Like, I just can't do it anymore. I'm I'm over it. And I was just,
yes,
kind of like pulling my hair out. Like, this has got to change. And I get that there was a pivotal moment for you. Maybe you could share just a little bit about that.
So I think the pivotal moment for me with my wanting to change was looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person that was looking back.
Yes.
And I actually just came back from delivering this conversation at a local university here in New York City. And so, when you get to a point in your life and everything's good, right? There's really nothing to complain about. And I'm married and 2 kids and all the things, except I would look in the mirror and I would be like, I don't know who's looking back at me. I don't know this person. She is not living the life that she deserves or wants, and it had really nothing to do with the people in my life, it really had everything to do with what I wanted and why I wasn't prioritizing myself over everybody else. And, that is a hard pill to swallow for a wife and a mother and a woman, because we tend to be the nurturers and we take on all the things all the time, and it gets overwhelming. And so that moment, like that literal, that breakdown, I guess, came at a point where I just couldn't handle any more stuff that was going on at work, and it was spilling over into my personal life, and we had 2 small children, and I was trying to do all of the things, and I realized that I couldn't do it all on my own. I couldn't do it. I had to ask for help, and I needed to admit to myself that I needed to change. Stuff needed to change in my life for me personally in order for me to be successful in the relationships that I was, in with my kids and my husband and, the friends and the family and all the things. So yeah, staring in the mirror and not liking what's looking back that's a kind of a defining moment.
It truly is. I've been there. I totally get it.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is to look back at it now. Like, wow, look how far I've come. But I get that it was about you being willing to choose you and make you a priority for a change.
Yep.
And for you to really identify, like you said, what really mattered most to you. Putting yourself as a priority is such a big deal. It's like almost like we don't know how to do that sometimes. We kind of need guidance. We need support. We need someone to step in and say, actually, no, that's not okay, for you to be treating yourself this way. And it's like, oh, you're right. It's not okay. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I love it that you've realized that you couldn't do it on your own. I think that's one of the biggest messages we need to come through with this cast, is because we often kind of have this, I got this, anything you can do, I can do better kind of mode. And to just slow it down and say, actually, I get to admit to myself that I need to make some changes here. And I'm obviously not getting it on my own, or I would have already arrived where I know I can be. To get the support is where it's at. And I just really, really appreciate you bringing that piece out, because I know that bringing that person in is such a big piece. And that's why you are here. Yeah. That's why I am here, because we know what a huge role that plays for the women that we serve. So tell me, I love that you reminded us about the fact that we just kind of look in the mirror and we don't know the person that's looking back at us. We just haven't really gotten identified with her, connected with her. And I know the 5 essentials of relationships not only affect how we feel about our partner, but in many respects, we get to do all of that work on the inside with ourselves. And that's what transforms our relationship outside of us. So maybe you can start telling us a little bit about the essentials and how those play into not only finding ourselves, but how that really like starts to bleed into what's really going on around us. Tell us about the 5 essentials.
So I'm just going to do this. Here's the book.
Yes.
It is called Why Am I Yelling? Because Relationships. And it talks about the 5 essentials you need to successfully maintain all of the relationships in your life. And I wrote this book as a foundational relationship book, as the beginning to a step-off point, quite honestly, to how we should take care of ourselves and all the relationships in our lives and how they're related. So here's how the 5 essentials came about, quite honestly. I started writing the book and I wrote all these stories and I wrote all my personal journey and, relationships and adolescence and all the different relationships that we have in our lives and how we build them and how we change them and how we have the power to make choices in our relationships. And then I hired an editor and she said to me, these are all really great stories, but how are we going to connect them? What do we want your audience? What do we want everyone to learn from this book? And I said, well, I want them to learn that every one of our relationships are connected. And she said, well, how are they connected? And I said, I don't know. And we just started making a list. And I was like, okay, you know what? Here's what we need to do. We need to poll the people. So I sent, emails out and Facebook polls, and I polled like 300 or 500, several hundred people. And I asked them one question. What are the top 3 to 5 things you need to have in all of your relationships? What are your non-negotiables? And I got a few hundred responses and I put them into an Excel spreadsheet and I, did the data stuff. And the top 5 things are the top 5 essentials in this book. So my readers and my audience helped me write this. So the top 5 are communication, boundaries, respect, support, and intimacy in no particular order. And then I wanted to talk about each relationship as it relates to ourselves and others in those relationships. So the first section of the book is the relationship you have with yourself and how these 5 essentials play into that relationship that you have with you. Because I just delivered this message to a room full of women. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. You wake up with you in the morning and you go to bed with you every night. You know what you love, you know what you hate, you know what you are avoiding, and you know what you are, moving toward. You know what you want. And sometimes you're afraid to voice that, but you're the one who truly knows. So the first part of the book is dedicated to loving yourself, mind, body, and spirit, and using these 5 essentials in each one of the relationships of those mind, body, and spirit that you have with yourself.
Beautiful.
And then the second part of the book moves into having relationships with other people in your life. And I started that part of the book at the age of adolescence because my son was the inspiration of this for this half of the book. And he was 10 years old and I was watching him, his relationships change as they get older and, like the girls are texting and the kids are around or whatever. And it reminded me of like when I was his age at 100 years ago. And I was like, I remember that. And I remember this. And I'm going to write this story and I'm going to do all these things. And I just kind of started thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? All of these essentials play such a big part of every one of our relationships. That's how they're connected. And that's how we need to talk about it. So I use it in the stories. They really start from adolescence all the way up to, losing relationships that you cannot get back. And why moving through all these parts of your life with these 5 essentials can really help you maintain your relationships better. And they can help you understand why some relationships don't work, right? Some relationships don't work because communication, some relationships don't work because, your boundaries weren't put up in the right place. Some relationships don't work because there's not enough intimacy in them. And so when you're kind of like, I had a friend read the book and she was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And this is why this relationship didn't work for me. And this is why this one does. And this is, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a mental checklist. Like, are you communicating every day? Are you, like going through what what the book tells you to go through. It's not even really a guide. It really is, a life-based book about how this all works, and it's relatable. You can relate to it in your business, you can relate to it in your life, you can relate to it in every one of your relationships. So I'm getting a lot of really good feedback from it, and it's totally, it's taken a bunch of different directions on its own, so that's exciting. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know what those essentials are and what your non-negotiables are in all of your relationships, so you can make sure that they're thriving.
Love it, love it. Thank you so much for that insight, because again, reminding ourselves that it starts with number one, and it doesn't, it's interesting because we'll all get to a place where we're looking around in our environment. We have this amazing husband, we have this amazing, couple of children, however it is for us, and an amazing life, and yet it just isn't working. Why?
Yep.
And when you start to identify those pieces, it can transform your entire life into almost like a butterfly experience, or the phoenix, where you kind of melt it all down,
yes,
distill it down into something that's really extraordinary, and you come out as this different being. So I would love to hear, Krista, what it is that changed for you when you identified where you were missing it, and what it is that you were able to become as the new Krista. What happened after you got clear and were able to make those changes, and what changed?
I think a lot changed. Some of my relationships changed. I changed as a human being. I think having the ability and the gift to be able to start my own business and really focus on what was important to me going forward as a coach and a consultant, and wanting to help other people, maximize their personal value, for lack of better way to say it, right? Like transforming lives and overcoming fear of change, because that is a huge thing for us. I think a lot of us stay stuck in the where we are because, like you said, everything seems to be great. We have we've so much to be grateful for. And we're questioning ourselves and doubting ourselves because we're saying, why isn't this enough? Because when everyone else is looking from the outside in, they're like, oh, they have a really nice house and they have a couple of kids and they have a lovely husband or a lovely partner. And,
there's more.
It's still not enough, right? It's still not enough. Yeah. It's like you want more. You don't want more stuff. You just want more. There's something missing in the fulfillment department.
Yeah.
And it really all has to start with you. And so I think, when I allowed myself, not even when I was allowed, because my husband has always been very supportive of me taking care of myself and being with my girlfriends and going on little trips and taking the time that I need for myself. But when I really convinced myself that it was important to not feel guilty about taking the time, because that's the other thing that we have to overcome as women. We all feel guilty about it. I mean, one woman raised her hand today in my seminar today, and she was like, I would love to be able to tell you that I'm going to spend more time on myself, but I'm going to feel guilty about it. And I was like, no, you're not. And here's how you're going to overcome that. Because you're too valuable. You're too valuable not only to yourself, but to everybody that relies on you. And if you can't focus on that and make that you look in the mirror and you're like, okay, I need to do 20 minutes of cardio today because it's going to make me feel better in my mind and my body and all the things, but I don't have time to do it because I've got all this other stuff. Take a step back and just be like, wait a minute. If I don't do this and make myself feel good for me, I'm going to end up at the end of the day being resentful for not being able to do it, mad at my husband, mad at my kids, mad at my this, and my attitude is not going to be where I want it to be.
Talk about why am I yelling, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, you think, our attitudes are a direct reflection of how we feel, right? So if you don't feel good about the person looking back at you, if you don't feel good about, the way you feel or the way you look or the way you act or the whole package, then it really is important to do something about it and not just settle and say, well, this is just how it's supposed to be, because it's not how it's supposed to be.
Yes. There's so much more available, but being willing to invest in ourselves, I think, is really a big piece of that. So you mentioned something about the non-negotiables, and I want to wrap up here shortly, but I just wanted to ask you if you could just articulate for us where you're at today with your non-negotiables. What are some things, like you were talking about the working out piece? It's kind of like the story, like, oh, I don't have time for fuel, and yet you're trying to get somewhere quick, right? Well, we're going to find out what's not having time when we run out of fuel, right? I mean, that's when you really have problems, and yet we often don't fuel ourselves with what we need. And those non-negotiables are absolutely essential for us to show up as our best selves. And how can we ever expect our best selves to show up with our family, with people we care about, with our colleagues, with our, anything, when we're not putting in the non-negotiables? And so I think what would be really helpful for our listeners at this point in the game is to just really articulate, what is it that is absolutely, this is going to be in the mix? No, what I'm not, I'm not pulling this out of my recipe for happily ever after, is how we all like to put it.
Yes.
We all have a recipe, and like you said, the essentials. There are essentials or non-negotiables, and we have to be willing to articulate those for ourselves. And as women, we actually need to sit ourselves down and say, how long, how often, when, what time. I mean, we get to just be so clear about these things, and so have so much clarity, and then be able to own them and actually be able to articulate them to others so that they can support us where they can. Like, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what it's going to look like. I think being able to be that clear with ourselves, and again, in partnership, you always have a part. That's our part. Being clear, being willing to own that for ourselves and not let anything be more important than us refueling. So what would be the non-negotiables for you at this point in the game?
I think non-negotiables for me are self-care.
Yes.
I think that's really important. I think, and it doesn't have to be an hour a day. It doesn't have to be 2 hours a day. Like, for me, it literally is getting up and spending time with myself when nobody else is around.
Yes.
And
alone time.
Meditating.
Big.
Yes. I'm a big meditator, and I like to do it in the morning, and I do gratitude practice in the morning and at night. But in the morning, I like to meditate and just make a list in my head, or sometimes I journal it out, of what I'm thankful for and what my day is going to look like for the day. It just clears me, and it makes me feel good. And I like to play some upbeat music. Like, my son and I, we walk to school every day because we live in the city, but we sing happy songs every day. Like, we sing a song, and we're I want to make sure that everyone's up in a good mood and happy. So that's a non-negotiable for me. Gratitude practice at night is a non-negotiable for me. Whatever you want to call it, gratitude practice, prayer, however it works for you, that is important for me, and it's a non-negotiable. I think spending time with the people that you care about the most is a non-negotiable. And it doesn't with your kids and with your husband and that stuff, but making time for your girlfriends and really being present in the moment and in each other's lives, and enjoying that, because that is, you can't live without that.
Yes.
And then I think small things here or there, but I think, making sure that your relationships, or for me, my relationships, are where they are and where they need to be, and putting forth the effort and being present in my own life is definitely a non-negotiable. Like, not taking myself for granted and really putting forth the effort into being the best person that I can be, so I can teach other people that it's doable, that I'm walking the walk and talking the talk, and if I can do it, trust me, anybody can do it.
Yes. Isn't that the truth? I've heard it. If I can do it, it can be done. I promise you.
Yes.
We are the overcomers, and we can tell you it can be overcome. This tendency to make everything and everyone more important. So we definitely recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it, that you create a list of your own non-negotiables. And if you'd be willing to share them in the chat here with us, even if you just shared a couple, I believe every single one of us would be better off if we could own what we really just heard, because those are very, very powerful, and they make a massive difference in your overall experience in every relationship in your life, including the one you have with yourself. So thank you, Krista. That was truly just rewarding, very meaningful, and just really nailed all the points that are going to truly serve our listeners today. For reference, for those of you that like to reach out to Krista, remember that she has, website. She has, her book. She has some wonderful pieces, and we'll add them all in the chat, in the show notes here. and we'll be coming back around to make sure those are available for folks to connect with you, Krista. Same here. If you have any other questions, if you have things you'd like to add, if you'd had, if there's some other things you'd love to have us bring forward in the show, this is our my brain is like, wait, what is it? We're in Happy Homes and Hearts, but we're actually doing this show called Love Your Life, Love Your Marriage. And this show will absolutely be here to serve you for many years to come. So we want to make sure that if there's something specific that you're looking for, that you reach out and let us know. And we're more than happy to dive deep with you on these specific topics and support you in your journey of creating your non-negotiables, of creating the life that you love, creating a marriage that you love. So do be sure to reach out to us if there's some way we can support you in that journey. Any last minute thoughts for us, Krista, and we'll wrap up.
That's it. Oh, you know what? There are 3 things that I say to my kids every day, and I told the women that I was talking to today, and they were all like, I love this. So I want you to say these 3 things to yourself every day. Be happy, make good choices, and I love you, because that's really what's the most important.
Oh, I love it. Be happy, make good choices, and remember that you're loved and that we love ourselves, right? So I love you. I love
Yes,
it.
I love you. Tell yourself I love you.
We need to hear it. We need to hear it way more often than we do, because it like shifts the whole world. Like, well, if I'm loved, I can do everything, right? Anything.
Anything.
If I'm safe, am I protected? Am I provided for? It's a big piece of it. Beautiful. Well said. Oh, I've just so enjoyed our chat today. Thank you so much for joining us, Krista. And we'll hang out here just for another moment and we'll connect back around. So I'm going to go ahead and end this stream. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Everyone.
We'll look forward to hearing from your comments. We'll come back around and circle back. So please put your comments in the chat here. All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks.